topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready for Insights to Incite? Ready or not, it's showtime. Now get ready to listen in and watch right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join us and together we will escape the mundane. Insights to Incite, here is your host, Brandon Lawson.
Grace is more powerful than condemnation. Kindness is stronger than cruelty. Mercy is mightier than judgment. Love is braver than fear. Holly Girth. Holly Girth is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, and there was another best-selling author, Ann Voskamp, who endorsed Holly's latest book called The Powerful Purpose of Introverts. And she wrote, Holly Girth is a deeply wise and trusted guide into what it means to thrive as an introvert. Not only is Holly a true sage, she actually lives the truth, health, and wholeness of which she writes. And an invitation to journey with her toward genuine growth and flourishing should not be missed. Practical, researched, and profoundly helpful, these pages will be a relief, an epiphany, a manifesto for any introvert. Friend, this is Brandon Lawson, coming to you from my home here in West Central Ohio. And today is Thursday, January 20th, and we will be getting into Lesson 3 of our series, of the RUA series. But first, before we do, I want to mention my two specials that I'm offering this month. The first one is the speaking special. And you see in here, I'll give 4 messages for the price of 3. And although these would have to be done in 1 or 2 speaking engagements, not to be stretched out over 3 or 4. And in addition, you can take advantage of me giving 10 messages for the price of 4, with all 10 would have to be delivered this year, in 2022. Plus, I have a coaching special that I'm offering to you. And in the coaching special, if you pay up front, you will save. You'll get 30% off your first 6 months with a 12-month agreement, or actually 70% off your first 8 months with a 30-month agreement. If you're interested in either of them or have any questions about that or anything else, you can contact me at the email there, brandon@connectandimpact.net or isc2ci@gmail.com. And I purposely want to mention the Gmail account because whenever I reply back from anyone sends them to brandon@connectandimpact.net, it will show it's coming from I speak to coach and impact, isc2ci@gmail.com. So, grace. What is it? And who is it to you? Grace is indeed both. Yes, grace is both a what and a who. Speaking of this, why don't you take a moment here and listen to this trio of ladies as they sing about the what and the who of Amazing Grace.
She had a father's blue eyes. He left home before she arrived. Mama named her Grace. Just getting by on their own when Grace was 15 she ran from home one December day. And Grace is lost and alone in a world as cold as stone. God is counting on us to reach her with His love. It's all about saving grace, all about living love, being Jesus to those He came to save, sharing life and giving our all away. All about serving God, all about saving grace.
So, does this grace, the unmerited or undeserved favor, as it's commonly known, does this grace describe you? Not sure. Of course, in this case, we're speaking of the what here. Even if your name is Grace, if you're a lady who has that name, we're speaking of the what. Does grace define or depict you? Not sure. Ask yourself, when was the last time that someone described you as gracious? How many people can you name who would honestly describe you and would speak of you as a gracious person? 2, 3, maybe 5 or 6, or 0? Me personally, I don't know how many would describe me as gracious. One side of grace, I tend to be far from it, and that side has to do with when someone does something foul or some kind of evil behavior or treatment of another, or something that was never should have been done. That I'm not one who believes in just writing it off. I believe in justice. They should pay for what they've done. That side of me is not too gracious. But there's another side that actually is. I love to bless people, and many times I will show kindness or extend generosity to people who have done next to nothing and perhaps nothing at all to deserve it. I know of a lady who was an older lady who was in line in front of me at a Walmart. I can think of this incident where she was in line and her bill came to something like 50 something bucks and change. And she went to use her card and it wasn't working. And she had said it was a new card and was supposed to be activated. And for whatever reason, it wasn't right. She didn't know her PIN, or I don't know exactly why it wasn't going through, but it wasn't accepting the card. And I told the cashier, put it on my tab. I didn't know that lady. I just saw a need and I stepped forward. So I can be very gracious in that respect, but not so much on the other. So today, well, in light of that, I really don't think that we should look past evil, the sick, heinous, crimes that people commit. And in fact, Jesus wasn't one that thought it was so right to look past it. Sure, he is the symbol of grace, or the cross in Christ, in terms of his grace is what redeems us when we don't deserve it. But listen to how he put it. We find this in the first book of the New Testament. the Gospel of Matthew. If you want to follow along, I'll be reading from Matthew chapter 23, starting in verse 1. Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples. The scribes and the Pharisees are seated in the chair of Moses. Therefore, do whatever they tell you and observe it, but don't do what they do, because they don't practice what they teach. They tie up heavy loads that are hard to carry and put them on people's shoulders, but they themselves aren't willing to lift a finger to move them. Then, skipping down to verse 13. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You lock up the kingdom of heaven from people, for you don't go in, and you don't allow those entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You devour widows' houses and make long prayers just for show. This is why you will receive a harsher punishment. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to make one proselyte, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as fit for hell as you are. But there you have it. Jesus calling out these leaders of the Jewish people. Here they were going about, and doing things that were just outright foul. He wasn't looking past it. So I really don't believe we should look past it. I mean, there's some things that aren't, maybe they're not that big a deal, you got to know when to pick your battles. But we're not to just write things off like it's nothing when people are doing foul things, and especially when it involves the treatment of others, and the behavior of such. So today, RUA asks, are you a gracer? That's a gracious person. Or are you a grumbler? Are you a gracer or are you a grumbler? Well, how often have you heard someone say, okay, that's enough. I got it. You can stop complaining now. Please stop your grumbling. Does that sound at all familiar? Friends, what happens when we are gracious? What happens when we are grumbling? Any thoughts? Well, a lot happens. Yes, a lot happens, whether it's something that's physically out in front of us and we see it, or it's something that turns over within a person. Nonetheless, a lot happens. And we're going to look into this and more in today's show. But at this moment, we're going to step away to our first commercial break. And when we come back, we'll get into this, what it is, what happens, and what comes about when people are gracious and when people are grumbling. We'll be right back.
Are you on the edge of your seat and wanting more? Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite with Brandon Lawson right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or by calling him at 513-708-1517. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
What happens? What happens when we are gracious? What happens when we are grumbling? Well, I'd like to look at it as when we do either of them, we bleed and breed. When you think of the cut you have on your skin, a cut here on your arm or something, and you're bleeding, the blood leaks out. And when we grumble or when we're gracious, it has a way of leaking out and in turn breeding other things that are sort of akin to, being gracious or akin to being grumbling. And I want to specifically hint at 3 symptoms that are breeded within when we are gracious and when we are grumbling. And the first, for gracious, G, it tends to breed good vibes, good feelings, about your about oneself and about your life in general. You tend to feel good about it. And P, it tends to that graciousness tends to bleed forth, and from it breeds a peace. People who are gracious generally have a peace about themselves. They have a peace about life. And then S, that graciousness is such that it bleeds out, and from it breeds forth a sacrificial spirit of such, where you're willing to sacrifice yourself, and you're not as indignant about everything going your way. You're sacrificial, you're selfless. But what about the grumbler? When we are grumbling, that grumbling, complaining, and that bleeds out. And one of the things that breeds forth is G. It breeds forth a gall. A gall is like a disdain. You're constantly grumbling. You disdain, people. You disdain life. The lens you see life through is anything but good. So G, gall. And then you'll notice that those who grumble a lot, they P, generally are characterized by being very pulverizing. To pulverize is like to grind something to very fine powder. It's like to disintegrate. You just bring it to nothing. And that's what a grumbler often becomes. It's the type that just wants to, you know, take any good of anyone and just wipe it out to where it's nothing. And that S, when you grumble a lot, that grumbling bleeds forth and breeds a nasty stench. While they may not smell odor in terms of a body odor, your presence, it creates a stench when you're known as a grumbler. Yes. And as we see in each of these cases, the accompanying three symptoms, that we spoke of were a GPS. And in each case, the GPS leads them to a destination, just like our global positioning system we use on our phone to get us to wherever we're going. But the destination that this GPS leads is a destination, a place within that person. And as we think of the gracious in their GPS, the good vibes, good feelings of oneself and about life, the peace they have, about who they are and about life in general, and being sacrificial and selfless. This leads them to a place of joy and contentment. They have more joy in life. They tend to be content, And yet, a grumbler, well, anybody who's constantly grumbling, they're anything but content, anything but joyful. A grumbler, their GPS, that gall about them, that pulverizing spirit, that stench, that their GPS leads them to the place of unwanted futility that festers. Yes. And with each of these, whether it be leading to the place of joy and contentment or the place of unwanted futility that festers, you'll find that while their GPS leads them to this place within them, it doesn't stop there. It spills over and out of them. Yes, it spills over and out. For the gracious, what spills over and out is the betterment of their life and of those around them, the betterment of their life and of their effect on others. As for the grumbling, their GPS that leads to that place of unwanted futility that festers, well, it spills over and out of them and brings about a bitterness toward others and a bitterness toward life. Yes. So, what else do you think of, or what comes to mind for you when you think of those who are gracious? Any thoughts? How about for those who grumble? What other things can you foresee or can you perceive or see about those folks in your mind's eye of those who are grumbling and complaining? Well, I think there's some things that are, I want to share here that I think are very true, and these will generally hold true. Maybe not every single time, but generally speaking, the gracious appreciate the good, and they are kind souls. In addition, they are well received. And in fact, there's a verse that comes out of the 4th chapter of the letter that Paul wrote to the church at Ephesus. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32, it says, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. That is what you see in people who are gracious. They tend to be kind toward one another. They're tender-hearted. They find it rather easy to forgive. The grumbler, on the other hand, the grumbler is narcissistic, and this person takes pride in seeing to it that your destruction, that your demise and destruction is brought about. It's been said that sometimes people try to destroy you. Do you have that slide, Rox? Sometimes people try to destroy you precisely because they recognize your power, not because they don't see it, but because they see it and they don't want it to exist. Then you also find that the gracious are happily structured and generous. One of the signs of someone who is generous who is gracious, is they tend to have a generous spirit about them. And then also, being that they're at peace, as I mentioned earlier, well, if your life's a chaotic mess, you don't know where things are, you're being pulled this way, that way, you have no say over your life, you're not leading your life's leading you. Well, guess what? You're not going to be too gracious because you're going to be miserable. You're going to be aggravated. You're going to be frustrated. So, in light of that, that's why I say gracious people are happily structured. They don't see this structure as this having a sort of a disciplined way of life as a detriment or as a restriction. They don't see discipline as being restrictive. They see that it gives them, peace, and that, they can keep things in line. They're not, all over the map. Gracious people are happily structured and generous. A grumbler, on the other hand, refuses order and structure and is very stingy. Yeah. Plus, you'll find that gracious people are encouragers. They like to help others. They like to contribute. They like to get outside of themselves and contribute to the greater good. Whereas grumblers, well, they are abusive and they feel threatened by your presence and your prominence. That goes back to that power they see. It's not that they don't see it, they just don't want it to exist. They feel threatened by your presence and your prominence, by your strength and your support. Yeah. And often this shows itself in how they always need an explanation, or they even go so far as requiring an explanation from you, simply so they can use it, whatever it is, against you. Yes. It's been noted that abusers expect an explanation for everything. If you provide an explanation, they will then proceed to discredit your stance and point out why your views are irrelevant. They want you to explain yourself so they can invalidate you and create justification to not consider any other view than their own. Yes, steer clear of them. Grumblers and narcissists, as Maria Consiglio accurately stated, the only way you will get along with a narcissist is if you become their ultimate source of supply. That means giving up yourself, your wants, your needs, your hopes, everything that makes you who you are, to try to fill the endless void in the heart of a narcissist. Don't do it. Friend, I say to you, and I plead with you, Don't do it. Don't go there. Don't go there. And if for whatever reason you do go there, you'll be lucky if all that happens is that it leads to a dead end. Because chances are you'll find yourself, your very life, ending up in a bottomless pit as you are worked over left and right by the grumbler, by the narcissist. So, again, I say, don't go there. Your life, your very life is much too valuable. So please, don't be a pleaser to a grumbler, to a narcissist. It's not worth it. Your life is worth much more. Don't let it be taken. Don't be ruled by another. Friends, we'll be right back. We're going to step away to our second commercial break. And when we come back, I got some other things I want to share with you that go along the lines of this. We'll be right back.
Wow, that was insightful. Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or by calling him at 513-708-1517. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
So, do you have a grumbler that you are around quite regularly and you don't have as much say in getting away from them? You know, maybe it's your kid. You know, they're not old enough to have their own place, so you don't just want to put them out on the street because you love them, you care about them. But all they do is grumble, complain, gripe, moan and groan. Or maybe it's someone at your job and you're not the supervisor. You have no say about, going to a different department or getting away from that person. Sure, you can speak to your supervisor, but many times that doesn't help. And you might have already went that route and spoken with your supervisor. So in such a scenario where, you know, we're pretty much stuck, what are we to do? How do we keep ourselves from becoming one of them? Or keep from, erupting? Like a lot of times when you're constantly around someone who aggravates you, and, more often than not, they might have started just because that's who they are. But whether it started that way or it was deliberate from the get go, in that they were trying to get into your skin, no matter how it started, these people will see they're getting under your skin, and they often will work it over more and more. And they're very sly and sneaky, and not doing it in front of others where they'd be in trouble. And as they do that, that aggravation, that disgust tends to build in us. It's sort of like lava in that volcano. And if we're not careful, we might be a personal volcano that erupts. So, what are we to do? Well, I believe that, two things that are widely known that can be helpful to us in such a situation. We may not be able to do it so much right then and there while we're there at work or while we're right next to them, but we can do these when we're once the shift ends, or when we're able to step away from them. When we go somewhere and the kids at the house, or the kids left and you're here at the house. When we're away from them, there's prayer. As I mentioned before, the Greek word from where we the Greek word catharsis is where we get the word catheter, and it's also where the English term pure comes from. When we're here on this earth, we will be contaminated. There's no getting away from it. I mean, we're constantly around so many different things that are ungodly, unhealthy, that are not good, not pure. So how is it that we can be pure? Well, that catharsis, the catheter, when someone drains their urine or what have you out, it's more than just a means as a way to use the restroom or be able to urinate. What it's in fact doing is it's releasing the toxins out of you. In prayer, we can go to the Father and give the stuff to Him, and it can help. Is it a cure-all where it's out of you? I'd venture to say no, because I know firsthand it hasn't worked for me in terms of, all of it being gone. But that's why I need to continue to go and release it to the Father, because it has its way of coming back or, staying with me. And it's not that I'm holding on to it. Over time, it gets a hold of me. So unless I go and release it, and make a point of doing that, then it will have a way of building. That lava will build in me and I will erupt. And the key, though, and this is something you can do, while it may not be saying an actual prayer that when those people are doing it at the moment, what you can do is what the Apostle Paul tells us to do. We find this in 2 Corinthians chapter 10. I'm going to read that real quickly. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, starting around verse 3. It reads, starting in verse 3, or actually, verse 3. For though we live in the body, we do not wage war in an unspiritual way, since the weapons of our warfare are not worldly, but are powerful through God for the demolition of strongholds. We demolish arguments and every high minded thing that is raised up against the knowledge of God, taking every thought captive to obey Christ. And we are ready to punish any disobedience once your obedience has been confirmed. But that taking every thought captive, that's what when something comes, we take it captive. The key is to catch it when it first comes, not allow it to come into you in that, because that's when it will start to fester or spread within. But we take it captive before it ever enters. And if it's not of Christ, if it's not of Him, we cast it down. We throw it down. We do not allow it in. And then the second thing we can do that is often, known very well in the Middle East, or an eastern part of our world, and it's become more popular in Western civilization, and that is meditation. You can meditate on good thoughts, meditate on some scripture. That's basically taking those words in that and just allowing them to simmer within you. Just relax, close your eyes. It might help if you have some relaxing music on. Some people need that, others don't. But allow those words to just simmer, to infiltrate, to permeate all through you. And that can give you a peace, a relaxation. It can relieve you of the stress that often comes with grumblers. Yes. Prayer and meditation. Use them. They're here for you. They're here for me. Let's use them. Let's take advantage of these tools that we have, these tools for reducing stress, for enjoying peace, for escaping the dirt, the filth, the grime of the grumblers, the narcissists. Friends, we're coming to the very end of our show. We're nearing the end here. And I recognize that what I've said today, what I say in any of my shows, are you going to agree with it all? Probably not. Will you agree with some? Probably. I mean, I'm not you, so I don't know how much you agree with, how much you don't. But I think it's safe to say that you and I will not always see everything eye to eye. Nonetheless, I invite you to join me every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, anywhere you go to access your podcasts. Join me here on Eye to Eye, Insights to Incite, every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern. Friends, I want to thank you for being here today. And as we are stepping away to the end of our show, I just want to mention, that, as we mentioned about the prayer and meditation is tools that are made for us to use to our advantage, to give us that peace of mind, to relieve us of stress and stuff, especially when, we have to be in the midst of such. We can't just walk away from it and escape right then and there. Later we can pray, we can meditate. And there's also 12 things that we can do that we should remember, that if we remember these and be mindful of them in those moments, it can help us to keep our peace and to not allow ourselves to be unraveled or to erupt. And as we conclude our show, Roxy is going to read these 12 things for us to remember. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next Thursday at 12 noon Eastern.
12 things to always remember. The past cannot be changed. 2. Opinions don't define your reality. 3. Everyone's journey is different. 4. Things always get better with time. 5. Judgments are a confession of character. 6. Overthinking will lead to sadness. 7. Happiness is found within. 8. Positive thoughts create positive things. 9. Smiles are contagious. 10. Kindness is free. 11. You only fail if you quit. And 12. What goes around comes around. Wow, what an insightful show. Thanks for listening in and watching today. If you missed any part of today's show or any other episode, check it out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now take today's insight and utilize it. Incite yourself to action and to excellence in the week ahead, and join us again next Thursday and every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time for another insightful session with Brandon Lawson as he speaks to us and shares some more insights to incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV.